You're sitting at the kitchen table on a Friday night, staring at a piece of paper or maybe a spreadsheet on your laptop. It's payday. This is supposed to be the good day, right? The day you feel a tiny bit of relief. But instead of relief, you're just watching the numbers vanish before the money has even fully cleared your checking account. You pay the mortgage or the rent. Boom. You pay the electric bill, which is somehow $30 higher than last month. Boom. You pay the minimums on the credit cards. Boom. You mentally allocate money for groceries, and you realize you have to increase that budget by $50 just to cover the exact same meals you ate last week. Boom. You just sit there watching your paycheck get completely demolished in a matter of 20 minutes, and you think, I don't understand. I got a small raise last year. We cut out the expensive streaming services. We haven't been on a real vacation in 3 years. Why does it feel like everything is collapsing all at once? It feels like that because you are standing at the end of a very long line of falling dominoes, and the very first domino in that chain is entirely out of your control. It's your friend Karen, who spends way too much time trying to make sense of money, people, and honestly, the way global events quietly infiltrate our homes is my ultimate rabbit hole. I look at the economy not as a series of graphs, but as a series of human behaviors in deeply interconnected systems. Right now, in 2026, we are living through a massive, undeniable economic shock. Because of the ongoing crisis in the Middle East, the Strait of Hormuz is functionally compromised, and the price of a barrel of crude oil has violently crossed the $100 threshold, spiking past $115 and $120. When you see that on the news, the talking heads act like it's just about gas prices. They act like the only pain you're going to feel is at the pump. But that is a profound, almost insulting misunderstanding of how the modern world actually works. Oil is not just fuel. It is the foundational building block of the entire global economy. When a barrel of oil crosses $100, it doesn't just make your commute more expensive, it acts as the first massive domino that knocks over the freight industry, which knocks over the agricultural sector, which knocks over the manufacturing sector, which eventually crashes right through your front door and crushes your monthly budget. Today, we are going to map the entire chain reaction. We are going to track the domino effect of $100 plus oil from a rig in the ocean directly to the eggs in your refrigerator. Because once you can actually see the dominoes falling, you stop blaming yourself for feeling broke. And more importantly, you can learn exactly where to step to get out of the way before the next one hits you. Grab a cup of coffee, take a deep breath, and let's trace the collapse. Domino 1, the psychological shock of the pump. The first domino is the most obvious one, but we have to talk about the psychological damage it inflicts before we talk about the math. When the price of crude oil explodes, the very first place you feel it is, obviously, at the gas station. You pull in, you put the nozzle in your car, and you watch the digital display spin with a speed that honestly makes your chest tight. It crosses $40, then $60, then $80. If you drive an SUV or a truck, you might easily cross the $100 mark just to fill your tank. This is the immediate, visceral hit. Let's say you commute 5 days a week and your gas bill goes from $50 a week to $85 a week. That is an extra $140 a month. That is $140 that has literally been evaporated from your disposable income. But it's not just the math, it's the psychology of it. When you spend $140 on a nice dinner out, you get joy, you get memories. When you spend an extra $140 simply to facilitate the drive to the job you need to survive, you get absolute, unadulterated resentment. It triggers a mindset of scarcity. You drive away from the gas station feeling poorer, feeling victimized by the system. And when you feel poor, you make defensive, sometimes irrational financial decisions. You might go home and snap at your spouse about leaving the lights on. You might feel a sense of nihilism and decide, well, I'm broke anyway, I might as well put this pizza on the credit card. Why it matters to you? This first domino sets the tone for your entire month. It establishes a baseline of financial anxiety that exhausts your decision-making abilities before you even get to the grocery store. You have to sever the emotional reaction to the pump. Treat fuel like a wildly expensive luxury, not a utility. The absolute best way to fight back against this first domino is to completely eliminate what I call invisible trips. Stop running to the store for one single item. If your car leaves the driveway, it must complete 3 or 4 errands in a single optimized loop. Do not let the price of gas dictate your emotional state. Let it dictate a new, hyper-efficient routine. Domino 2, the diesel tax on everything you touch. So the first domino hits your car. The second domino hits every single other vehicle on the planet. And this is where the math of your life starts to quietly self-destruct. You see, your Honda Civic runs on unleaded gasoline, but the global economy? The global economy runs on diesel. Diesel fuel is the lifeblood of logistics. It powers the massive container ships crossing the oceans. It powers the freight trains cutting across the country. It powers the 18-wheeler trucks on the highway. And it powers the delivery vans dropping boxes on your porch. When a barrel of crude oil spikes past $115, the price of commercial diesel fuel violently surges. Now, put yourself in the shoes of a logistics company or a massive corporate retailer. Their fuel costs just went up by 30 or 40%. Do you honestly believe they are going to absorb that loss? Do you think they're going to say, wow, times are tough. We should probably take a hit to our profit margins to help out the middle class? Absolutely not. They instantly implement a diesel surcharge. Let's look at a pair of sneakers. 2 years ago, maybe it cost the company $3 to physically ship those sneakers from a factory overseas to a warehouse and then to your local mall. Today, because of the rerouted ships avoiding the Middle East conflict and the massive cost of diesel, it costs them $7 to ship those exact same sneakers. The retailer takes out their pricing gun and they raise the retail price of the shoes from $60 to $69. This is the second domino. It is an invisible diesel tax levied on every physical object you buy. It's on your clothes, your electronics, your furniture, and your toilet paper. You are paying for the fuel of a truck you have never seen. You might think you can budget your way around gas prices by simply not driving, but you cannot opt out of the diesel tax. If you consume goods, you are paying for diesel. This is why inflation feels so sticky and impossible to escape during an oil crisis. Stop buying heavy, cheap items online. When you buy a 20-pound bag of dog food on Amazon for free shipping, you are paying a massive hidden diesel premium baked into the price of the product to move that heavy item to your door. Go to a local feed store or a big box retailer and buy the heaviest items yourself in bulk. You must become the final mile of your own logistics chain to save the premium. Domino 3, the plastic and packaging premium. All right, so the goods cost more to move. Now we have to look at what those goods are wrapped in. Here comes the third domino, and it is entirely based on chemistry. When we think of oil, we think of things we burn, but oil and natural gas are actually raw materials. They're the foundational chemical ingredients used to manufacture petrochemicals, and petrochemicals are what we use to make plastic. Look around your kitchen right now. Look inside your refrigerator. How much plastic do you see? The clamshell container holding your strawberries, the squeeze bottle holding your ketchup, the thin film wrapped around your cheese, the plastic bag holding your cereal inside the cardboard box, the jug holding your milk. Every single one of those packaging materials is directly derived from the energy markets. When crude oil hits $115 a barrel, the raw material cost to manufacture a plastic ketchup bottle skyrockets. This is a massive problem for food manufacturers. They are suddenly paying a premium not just for the food inside the bottle, but for the bottle itself. And how do they handle it? They use the oldest trick in the corporate playbook, shrinkflation. Instead of raising the price of the ketchup by 50 cents and making you angry, they keep the price exactly the same, but they redesign the plastic bottle. They make it a little taller, a little thinner, and they put a massive cavernous divot in the bottom of it. They use 10% less plastic to make the bottle, and they put 15% less ketchup inside of it. You buy it because the price tag looks familiar, but your budget just took a direct hit. You're paying the exact same amount of money for fewer calories, and you will have to buy the next bottle of ketchup a week sooner than you usually do. This is the most insidious domino because it is designed to bypass your awareness. You don't feel the pain at the cash register. You feel the pain at the end of the month when your pantry is empty 3 days before payday. you must become fiercely protective of unit prices, completely ignore the brightly colored price tag on the shelf, and look at the microscopic price per ounce in the corner. Better yet, avoid the plastic premium entirely. Buy whole, loose produce instead of pre-packaged clamshells. Buy generic brands that don't spend millions on fancy shrink-flated plastic molds. Do not pay an oil market premium for a piece of trash you are going to throw in the recycling bin anyway. Domino 4, the fertilizer and food shock. We're moving deeper into the chain reaction now. This fourth domino is the most dangerous one, and it is the reason why the economic pain of 2026 is going to echo well into 2027 and beyond. It involves natural gas, which is inextricably linked to the oil markets. Because of the geopolitical crisis and the blocked shipping lanes, natural gas prices have exploded in Europe and Asia. Why does that matter for your grocery bill in North America? Because natural gas is the primary ingredient used to make synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. Modern commercial agriculture is a marvel of science, but it is entirely dependent on fertilizer. Without it, the soil cannot support the massive crop yields required to feed 8 billion people. When natural gas prices spike, the cost to manufacture fertilizer doubles and sometimes triples almost overnight. I want you to think about a farmer planning for the planting season. He looks at the price of fertilizer and realizes it will cost him twice as much to treat his fields as it did last year. He has a few terrible choices. He can buy less fertilizer, which means his land will produce significantly less corn and wheat, or he can buy the expensive fertilizer and pass the cost along. Either way, the result is the same. The global supply of grain becomes incredibly expensive. But it doesn't stop at bread and pasta. Who eats the vast majority of the corn and soybeans grown in the world? Livestock, cows, pigs, and chickens. When the cost of grain explodes, the cost of feeding a herd of cattle explodes. The ranchers cannot afford to take that loss, so they raise the wholesale price of beef. This is the domino effect in its purest, most terrifying form. A drone strike near the Strait of Hormuz causes natural gas prices to spike, which makes fertilizer unaffordable, which lowers the yield of corn, which makes feeding chickens too expensive, which means you are suddenly paying $9 for a dozen eggs and $14 for a pack of chicken thighs. There is a time lag to this domino. The food you are buying at the grocery store today was grown and harvested months ago, before the worst of the energy spikes hit the fertilizer market. The high prices you see now are mostly the diesel shipping taxes. The real food inflation, the massive shock caused by the agricultural deficit, hasn't even fully hit the retail shelves yet. You have to build a defensive pantry right now. Do not wait for the harvest shock to hit the meat counter. Start aggressively stocking up on cheap, shelf-stable proteins and grains today. Buy rice, dried beans, lentils, and canned meats while they are still somewhat tethered to reality. You are essentially using your current cash to lock in today's prices, insulating yourself against the massive food inflation that is mathematically guaranteed to arrive in the next 6 months. Domino 5, the utility and energy drain. All right, we have covered your car and your food. Now the dominoes are crashing directly into your living room. When you get your electric bill or your natural gas bill this winter or summer, you are going to be in for a very rude awakening. We have this tendency to think of electricity as this clean, abstract, magical force that just lives in our walls. But electricity has to be generated. And how is the vast majority of electricity generated globally? By burning fossil fuels, coal, and natural gas. When the global energy markets are in absolute chaos because of $115 oil, the cost for your local utility company to purchase the natural gas required to spin their turbines goes through the roof. Now, utility companies are usually heavily regulated monopolies. They can't just raise your rates tomorrow because they feel like it. They have to go to a state or regional commission and request a rate hike based on their increased operational costs. But when the global cost of energy has doubled, those commissions almost always approve the hikes. It is simply a pass-through cost. So, a few months after the oil shock makes headlines, you open your mail and find a notice from your power company cheerfully explaining that your kilowatt-hour rate is increasing by 18% to cover volatile fuel market conditions. Suddenly, keeping your house at 70 degrees in the summer or 68 degrees in the winter becomes a massive luxury. Your baseline cost of existing inside your own home just jumped by $30 or $40 a month. This domino is brutal because it attacks your non-discretionary budget. You can choose to not buy a new pair of shoes. You cannot choose to freeze in the dark. It forcibly extracts cash from your checking account, leaving you with even less money to deal with the food and gas inflation we already talked about. You have to declare a ruthless, uncompromising war on vampire energy and thermal loss in your home. You can no longer be lazy about your thermostat. Drop it 2 degrees in the winter and raise it 2 degrees in the summer. Buy weather stripping for $20 and seal your front door. Unplug the extra refrigerator in your garage that holds exactly 4 cans of soda and is costing you $15 a month in electricity to run. Treat the energy flowing into your house as if it is bleeding directly from your wallet, because it is. Domino 6, the interest rate anchor, the macro trap. This is the final domino. It is the biggest, the heaviest, and it is the one that permanently traps the middle class in a cycle of poverty. We have to talk about the Federal Reserve, inflation, and your credit cards. For the last year, everyone who has a mortgage, an auto loan, or credit card debt has been desperately waiting for one thing. They want the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. We've been holding our breath thinking, if they just drop the rates, my minimum payments will go down, borrowing will get cheaper, and I can finally breathe. When oil crosses $100 a barrel, that hope is completely, violently destroyed. Here's why. The Federal Reserve's primary job is to control inflation. When inflation is high, they raise interest rates to slow down the economy. When inflation is low, they lower rates. But as we just spent the last 20 minutes discussing, $100 plus oil causes the price of absolutely everything to skyrocket: gas, shipping, food, utilities, plastic. Oil is inflation. Because the global energy markets are in absolute chaos because of $115 oil, the cost for your local utility company to purchase the natural gas required to spin their turbines goes through the roof. Now, utility companies are usually heavily regulated monopolies. They can't just raise your rates tomorrow because they feel like it. They have to go to a state or regional commission and request a rate hike based on their increased operational costs. But when the global cost of energy has doubled, those commissions almost always approve the hikes. It is simply a pass-through cost. So, a few months after the oil shock makes headlines, you open your mail and find a notice from your power company cheerfully explaining that your kilowatt-hour rate is increasing by 18% to cover volatile fuel market conditions. Suddenly, keeping your house at 70 degrees in the summer or 68 degrees in the winter becomes a massive luxury. Your baseline cost of existing inside your own home just jumped by $30 or $40 a month. This domino is brutal because it attacks your non-discretionary budget. You can choose to not buy a new pair of shoes. You cannot choose to freeze in the dark. It forcibly extracts cash from your checking account, leaving you with even less money to deal with the food and gas inflation we already talked about. You have to declare a ruthless, uncompromising war on vampire energy and thermal loss in your home. You can no longer be lazy about your thermostat. Drop it 2 degrees in the winter and raise it 2 degrees in the summer. Buy weather stripping for $20 and seal your front door. Unplug the extra refrigerator in your garage that holds exactly 4 cans of soda and is costing you $15 a month in electricity to run. Treat the energy flowing into your house as if it is bleeding directly from your wallet, because it is. Domino 6, the interest rate anchor, the macro trap. This is the final domino. It is the biggest, the heaviest, and it is the one that permanently traps the middle class in a cycle of poverty. We have to talk about the Federal Reserve, inflation, and your credit cards. For the last year, everyone who has a mortgage, an auto loan, or credit card debt has been desperately waiting for one thing. They want the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. We've been holding our breath, thinking, if they just drop the rates, my minimum payments will go down, borrowing will get cheaper, and I can finally breathe. When oil crosses $100 a barrel, that hope is completely, violently destroyed. Here is why. The Federal Reserve's primary job is to control inflation. When inflation is high, they raise interest rates to slow down the economy. When inflation is low, they lower rates. But as we just spent the last 20 minutes discussing, $100 plus oil causes the price of absolutely everything to skyrocket. Gas, shipping, food, utilities, plastic. Oil is inflation. Because the geopolitical crisis is forcing energy prices up, inflation is sticking around. It might even be climbing again. And if inflation is climbing, the Federal Reserve cannot, under any circumstances, lower interest rates. They might even have to hold them higher for longer or actively raise them again. So what does this mean for you? It means the $8,000 balance you are carrying on your credit card at a 24% annual percentage rate is going to stay at 24% for the foreseeable future. Look at the compounding cruelty of this. The first 5 dominoes, the gas, the groceries, the utilities, have drained all the spare cash out of your budget. You are exhausted. You have no money left at the end of the month. So when your car breaks down, or your kid needs braces, or you just need to buy groceries to survive the week, what do? You put it on the credit card. You are forced to take on debt just to survive the baseline inflation. But because of the oil shock, the interest rate on that debt is punitively, astronomically high. The bank is charging you premium interest to finance your basic survival. Your minimum payments swallow whatever tiny fraction of your income you had left. You are officially trapped in the cycle. The dominoes have fully pinned you to the floor. This is how a geopolitical conflict on the other side of the planet translates into a permanent downgrade of your family's net worth. High oil forces you into debt, and high interest rates ensure you can never pay it off. You must execute a ruthless financial triage today. You cannot wait for the macroeconomic environment to improve. The cavalry is not coming. You have to pause all discretionary spending immediately. Take every single spare dollar you can scrape together from cutting your energy bill, batching your errands, and buying generic groceries, and hurl it at your highest interest debt. You are in an emergency. Treat it like one. All right, take a deep breath. Honestly, I know this is a lot. It is heavy, it is depressing, and it is infuriating. Sometimes I look at this massive interconnected web of corporate greed and geopolitical chaos, and I just want to scream. It is profoundly unfair that you, a normal person just trying to do your job and raise your family, are expected to absorb the financial shockwaves of a broken global empire. You have every right to be angry. But anger is not a financial strategy. Complaining about the government on the internet will not lower your grocery bill. Blaming the oil companies will not pay your credit card minimums. You have to accept the reality of the board as it is currently played. The dominoes are falling. You cannot stop the first one from tipping over, but you do not have to stand in the line. You can step out of the way. You can build a firebreak. A firebreak is what forest rangers do when a wildfire is raging out of control. They don't try to put out the fire, it's too big. They go a mile ahead of the fire and they bulldoze all the trees and brush in a wide line. When the fire reaches that line, it has no fuel left to burn and it stops. You have to build a financial firebreak around your household. You have to actively remove the fuel that this economy is trying to burn. Step 1. Rewrite the budget with the war tax built in. Do not operate on hope. Do not look at your budget from last year and think you can make it work. Sit down this weekend and assume that every single mandatory expense, gas, utilities, groceries, is going to permanently increase by 15%. Calculate that exact dollar amount. Now go into your discretionary spending, the restaurants, the subscriptions, the fun money, and violently amputate that exact amount. You are prepaying the war tax before it forces you into credit card debt. Step 2. Become friction tolerant. The modern economy is built on selling you convenience. DoorDash, pre-chopped vegetables, Amazon Prime, drive-through coffee. Convenience relies entirely on cheap diesel and cheap plastic. Because those things are no longer cheap, convenience is now a luxury good for the wealthy. If you want to survive, you have to learn to tolerate friction. You have to accept that life is going to be a little more annoying. You have to cook from scratch. You have to pick up your own food. You have to drive in silence with a coworker to save gas. You are trading your personal convenience for financial security. Step 3. Isolate your liquidity. The system wants you broke and in debt because a broke consumer is a compliant consumer. The ultimate act of rebellion in 2026 is hoarding cash. Do not buy into the fear-mongering that the dollar is collapsing and you need to buy gold. In a high-inflation, high-interest rate environment, having a pile of liquid cash in a high-yield savings account is your ultimate armor. It means when the alternator in your car dies, you pay cash instead of putting it on a 24% credit card. You break the final domino before it can fall on you. I know you are exhausted. We all are. It feels like we are living in a historic, unprecedented economic event every single Tuesday. It is incredibly easy to just give up, to look at the $115 barrel of oil, look at the $8 box of cereal, and just slide into financial nihilism, to say the game is rigged, the dominoes are too big, I'm just going to swipe my card and worry about it later. Please do not do that. The people who engineered this system are banking on your exhaustion. They are relying on your apathy. They want you to just accept the higher prices and finance the difference, because that is how they hit their quarterly earnings targets. You have to be smarter than them. You have to be more ruthless than them. You know how the chain reaction works now. You can literally trace the path from the Strait of Hormuz to the diesel truck to the fertilizer plant to the plastic wrapper straight to your wallet. You are no longer blind to the mechanics of the trap. And because you can see it, you can beat it. You can strip the invisible trips out of your week. You can leave the name brand's shrinkflated junk on the shelf. You can aggressively pay down the debt that is anchoring you to the floor. You can draw a firm, uncompromising line around your household and say the global economy might be crashing, but it stops at my front door. Take a breath. Look at your numbers. Build your Firebreak. You have the tools to survive this. You really do. You've got this. I'll see you in the next one.